Hello and welcome to Wisdom and Productivity, the podcast of Dr. Efraim Martinez. I am a principal in search of wisdom, and I have found productivity to be a great tool for success. Today, I have the great honor of interviewing Erik Francis, who is the author of Deconstructing Depth of Knowledge with Solution Tree and Now That's a Good Question with ASCD. With Maverick Education, he provides professional development, guidance, and support on how to develop and deliver teaching and learning experiences that are academically rigorous, socially and emotionally supportive, and student responsive. Erik M. Francis, who are you?
Who am I? Well, first and foremost, I'm a dad. Have three great daughters, and that's kind of who I am as a person. It's kind of how I really take my pride as being. I'm, as you said, an author, an educator, presenter, and a professional development provider. I've been actually doing what I've been doing with Maverick Education. That's my company, spelled Maverik, no C in Maverick. If you go to my webpage, maverickeducation.com, put a C in it, you'll go to India. Yeah, somebody got my URL address. I've been doing this actually now for 11 years, which is really interesting because it's about the same amount of time I was in the classroom. I started off as a classroom teacher. I was a middle school and high school teacher. I was a site administrator. I worked for the Department of Education in Arizona. And in 2012, that's when I started on this venture. I guess the best thing about who I am is I'm an educator and a learner at heart. I love to teach, and most importantly, I love to learn, and that's something that I realize, and through my professional development that I do. I'm not just teaching teachers; they're teaching me as well. I'm learning from those as well, and yeah, that's kind of who I am in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So, walk us through that professional trajectory. How come you became a teacher? How come you end up saying, you know what, I'm going to dedicate my life to provide professional development?
Well, education was not, I was not intending to become an educator. I wasn't one of those people who like knew they wanted to be a teacher ever since they were a kid. That was actually a second career for me. I wanted to be in the film industry, and I did work in the film industry before I got into education. I got my master's degree in film and television production from Syracuse University at the Newhouse School of Public Communications. And about a couple of weeks after I graduated my master's, I moved to LA. Got my first job 3 weeks later, working in a talent agency, working in a mailroom, because that's how you go. And I made less
Mm-hmm.
than working in the mailroom in a talent agency than I did my first year of teaching, which says something. Then I worked for a very well-known producer, and that was a great experience for a couple of years. But I was in LA. I went to New York. I just didn't like being in the film industry. This is right before, this is way before, TMZ and everything. So everything was just
Mm-hmm.
so public and with cameras. It is not a great industry in terms of social emotionally, in terms of what happens to you there. So I moved to Arizona. My folks retired out here, 25 years old, second career. What do I want to do? I enjoyed working with kids. I worked at summer camps. I love, being on a stage, which is kind of what teaching allows you to do, not a sage on the stage. But that's when I started my career, about 25, 26, started teaching. Then I got into administration, and, that was kind of an interesting experience. It really says something that we need mentors when you start being an administrator. I mean, I was thrown into an assistant principal position with no mentoring whatsoever. So everything was asking for forgiveness, but having it held against me for every rookie mistake I made. Then I went again to the state departments where I really learned about finance, policy. It gave you a different perception because when you work in education, you look up at your district office and you're like, "Wow, you guys must know every." And then now you're looking down, and you're just like, "Wait a minute, you guys don't know that?" And it was really interesting. And again, 2012, I decided, to go break out on my own. A lot of people said, do this thing called consulting, which was completely foreign to me. And I've been blessed to do it for 11 years now. And really, I became the instructional leader I always wanted to be. Going into administration, a lot of that was wanting to be an instructional leader. But, to tell you the truth, Efren, a lot of it was because when I was a teacher, my wife's a teacher too, we weren't making ends meet. And we both talked, we both got our masters to be administrators. We decided I was going to go. And I felt like I was anything but. And to tell you the truth, the great thing about that experience is considered to be one of my lack of successes. I don't call it failure because failure is when we don't. But
Mm-hmm.
if I was not um, unsuccessful, which is interesting to say, as an administrator, I don't think I would be on this pathway that I am now. And I'm very blessed to have it. I'm very blessed to be able to do what I do, to continue to what I do for 11 years. And,
Wow.
you know, through COVID, through even, personal things, I went full time doing Maverick Education. I had an anchor job before I did this, working in a charter school here locally in Arizona. And then my dad died like a month after I went full time. So he never got to see this, become whatever it is. And that kind of like fuels me a little bit, because one of the worst things I think that could happen to me in life, I always said, was, other than something happened to one of my daughters, is my father dying. He was my best friend, and he did. And I got through it, and I lived through it, and I came through it. And my gosh, it made me a stronger person. And I really credit a lot of that experience to being able to do what I do. Having survived through COVID, where my business, which was the Titanic, hit at that iceberg. Um, and I don't know if that was a long story around how you got it, but it was just like, I think a lot of the personal experiences I've had with it really helped shape me, who I am, what I do, and why I do. I think that's the big thing. It's who and why I do. That's my big takeaway about that.
Beautiful. Let's deconstruct that story. So what would be your most memorable experience as a teacher?
My most memorable experience as a teacher. I can't. I don't know. It's hard to narrow it down one. I mean, I've had so many successes as a teacher, and even lessons learned as a teacher. Um, I think just really, I have this one student that I think of. I used to coach academic decathlon, and this student in my class, he got he didn't do well. His first and second year, he got all F's, and it's not because of his academic acumen. It was because of social emotional issues. And I told him, I said, dude, you're brilliant. Just do the work, man, and you'll pass. And it kind of clicked. It said, that was the secret of school. And I told him that was my secret in school. If I just did the work, um, got B's, because I wasn't, sadly, I don't think, my teachers, I can count probably on one hand how many teachers really influenced me. Um, but I just realized that school was about just do the work, get through, man, and get your degree, and then go do great things. And I told him that, and he passed, and he got stellar grades. He all of a sudden went from being an F student because of zeros to A's. And I got him on my academic decathlon team. And what academic decathlon does is, you have 9 kids competing, and you have 3 for each group by threes. So the first 3 are your 4.0 kids. The second 3 are your 3.0 kids, and your third is your 2.9s and below, which really honors a lot of the gifted kids, because we know a lot of gifted kids are underperforming. And this kid was brilliant. He was gifted and talented. Um, so I got him on the team, and he was like always like my sweeper in baseball, like that guy would just knock it out of the park. I mean, so much like his name became legend. And the problem was that he came back the next year, but his grades were so well, I had to boot him up to the B team, not the C and below. And he graduated. He got a scholarship to Northern Arizona University, and now he's a doctor. So, and that's just one of many, and that's what just like pops in my head right now. But I think there's also kids I think about, I was not successful with, or things I even did as a teacher. Like, why did I hang my hat on that? Why did I die on that sword? Why was it important for me that they write their name and the heading of the paper in the proper format? I think that's the thing that stands out to me, really, success. But I think a lot of it also makes me shape as a teacher. And I think also being a professional development person, which we can get into, because sometimes people say about that is that when you provide in PD, when was the last time you were in the classroom? And it's been a while, I'll admit it. But sometimes when you're not in the classroom and you can see things from the outside and you can kind of reflect and say, you know what, maybe that's not the sword I need to die on. I compare it to being like a soldier. When a
Mm.
soldier is on the battlefield, you got all these explosions are all going around you. It's very hard to tap into your training when you all of a sudden get into that. Oh my gosh, that survival mode. But then you got that person back at the Pentagon who's kind of maneuvering everything, or the general who's been on the battlefield, which I think I like to say I have as a teacher, and it can kind of see things at a bigger scale. And I think that's one of the things my experience as an educator did. It made me see things as a greater scale, learning from those experiences, even as a professional development provider. Look, I'll admit, I don't reach everybody. I mean, doing PD is kind of like teaching your class. Not everyone's going to like you and not everyone's going to like what you're teaching, but I learned from those people too. And I think that's what made me just a better teacher overall, not even just of students, but also a professional development person.
Amen. I'm trying to understand how a a professional development specialist is built through time. So, can you tell us what was one or two lessons that you learned when you, like many of us, you are thrown into an AP position and
Mhm.
you come with all these ideas on what it should be, and then you realize that things are quite daunting. What can we learn from you?
Um, hmm. I think the biggest thing is that this is not a solution. This is not an escape if you don't like your job. Um, And I think that's a big thing. One of the big things to learn from that is that this is not what's your why you want to do it. That's the big thing. Why do you want to do what it is you're doing in professional development? I think the other big thing is that you can't come in and do the same thing with every school. I mean, my philosophy of professional development is that why is it we differentiate instruction, but we don't differentiate professional development?
Mm.
Um, it's a challenge because the hard thing is you have to change every time you go to a new school. Every time if I came to your school, what I would do with your school, it may be the same slides, but the presentation would be different and geared towards what it is that your school needs. I think the biggest lesson you have to learn is that it's not about you, it's about what you do. Okay. Um, and I think that's kind of a thing that some of us kind of lose sight on, that it's not Eric Francis, it's I'm providing knowledge and ideas around depth of knowledge, questioning, rigor. It's not that, like, like my name or anything. And I think some of us, I'm gonna be honest with you, Efren, I think some of us have kind of lost that, where we've established this identity, and it's almost that we talk about what we do in professional development as a brand. I'm not a brand. I'm Eric Francis. I'm Maverick Education is the brand, and maybe that's the reason why I kind of didn't name it, Eric Francis Consulting or whatever. But you got to kind of think of it like when you're a superhero. When
Mm.
when Peter Parker puts on the mask, he's Spider-Man, and that's that persona. It is a part of him, but people see that. But when he takes off the mask, now he's Peter Parker, and even underneath the mask, he's Peter Parker. I think that's the biggest thing, is that doing this thing with professional development, you got to really ask why, because you see a lot of the lucrative stuff we do. You see, we're presenting at conferences. Well, you didn't see that that was one acceptance after 9 rejections from another place that you want to go and present. You see that we travel everywhere. Well, you didn't see that we got stuck in an airport for 6 hours because our plane was delayed. Or, you can see on Facebook, there's a bunch of us who talk about their flights being canceled and we have to drive, 2-3 hours or, because and we have a keynote the next day or something. And I think also you have to really understand what you want to do in this professional development world. There are keynoters and there's professional development providers and supporters. When you keynote, it's like a show. And what I've keynoted and what I feel like sometimes when I keynote, I'm more focused on, is my audience laughing at my jokes than learning what it is that I have to present. And that's a lot of stress on me. It's like, and
Sure.
I'll make that joke. I'll say like, I'll be very transparent and say, look, I'm more of a workshop person. I do keynotes. I can keynote, but when I'm keynoting, I'm more, it seems like I'm more focused on whether you're laughing at the jokes I will tell you. Just like right now, you didn't laugh at that. Great. Okay, moving on. That's the thing. And you got to know who you are and what you want to do. And it's not what you do and what, it's more so what you're bringing. And don't go in as a savior, go in as a problem solver. I think that's the biggest thing. And really understand why you want to get into it. It is not easy. And I'm not complaining about it, but it's work. You wake up every morning, you don't have a job. So you got to have that mindset. Either A, I got to go get a job. B, I got to go work with some people that I already have. Or C, I got to go create a job. And that is a lot of things because it's easy to wake up and sit and binge watch Ted Lasso or, The Mandalorian or whatever, is on Netflix at that time. But you have to really be focused and have a mindset with it. I kind of compare it to over my journeys with what I've done is like I've met professional wrestlers in airports, and they're on the road 350 days a year. There's a thing that they call in pro wrestling 350 days, and you get there and you see them in the ring, you see them on the show, but you don't see that they had to fly into this place and then get on the rent a car and get there, and then you get to a hotel, and sometimes there's no restaurants open. And if you're lucky, they got a decent gym in the hotel where, you can get a quick workout in and because you gotta, if you eat on the road, all you eat is restaurants and everything. So just have me real and honest. I'm going to give you an honest perspective of it. Number one, why is it what you're doing? And number two, who do you want to be in this realm? I used to get very envious. I still do a little bit about some people. Like I see they get this opportunity, they're keynoting and stuff like that. Great. But what is that really about? And you have to really reflect upon yourself. Like, what is it you really want this? I don't want to be Erik Francis. It used to be. I mean, I'll admit to you, in 11 years, it used to be like Erik Francis. Ooh, I want that name. And man, it's such a thrill when people come up and go, oh, you're Erik Francis. And you're like, people want your autograph and stuff like that. That's awesome. But at the end of the day, what is it you really want to do? And it's really funny. Paula Maker and I, she's a friend of mine, colleague, Solution Tree. Her book just came out, Literacy in a PLC. If I got that title wrong, Paula, I apologize. We were talking about this, and you have to ask yourself, would you do what you're doing for free? And we both actually said in that conversation at the same time, it was really funny. It was like, yes, because it's about the relationship. It's not about, that's the reward, not the money. You can make a lot of money at this, but the reward is the relationship. And you have to really think about whether you're serving others or do you get to a point where you're just serving yourself?
Wow. So profound. Erik, at some
At 5 in the
point,
morning in Arizona and
wow. You see, there's something about the morning, right? Robin
Mhm.
Sharma says, own your morning, elevate your life.
That's
Um,
right. That's right.
Erik, at some point, you decide to come up with Maverick Education and Consulting, and I see it as a stage is open, and all of a sudden you might not be ready for what to face.
Mhm.
What advice do you have for people who are working in schools or state departments who decide to go into this world? What are two or three lessons that you can share with us, so people perhaps don't go through the same roadblocks that you went to?
Wade into the water. Don't dive in. Okay. Um, don't quit your J job. When I did this, I did not all of a sudden say, boom, I'm going into consulting full time. I was working at the State Department here in Arizona, State Department of Education. I got to a ceiling. Someone put some bugs in my ear. You should go out and consult, because I was what's called a Title I specialist, and I was doing compliance check and helping. I created a training program here in Arizona that taught new charter schools how to implement a Title I program. And they started as target assistants, and then they went school wide. And then I said, look, let's do this for everybody. And then we came up with a policy that was called School Wide 3, where you talk about how to blend your funds, excuse me. And then, someone put that bug in my ear. And then at the same time, I had a local charter group out here, charter management organization, said, will you come work for us? And I said, I'll come work for you if I can consult on the side. And I was fortunate. It went like this. So don't dive in. That's rule number one. Don't quit your day job. Rule number two, apply to every conference that you can. Okay. That's where people will see you. That's where people will know you. I got my start presenting at conferences. I presented here locally in Arizona. I had the opportunity to present when I was working at ADE, so people knew I was. But I would just, and I still do to this day, I put my name in I Google search education conferences, call for proposals, call for presenters 2022, 2023. I apply, I present, I go anywhere. I'll present at any conference that, I feel that I can do things. The great thing is that when you're an educator and you're at a school, this is how else you can get your professional development hours. Now with
Mhm.
me, this is sometimes what people don't realize about the conferences. They make you pay to play. So when you're
Mhm.
presenting, like when you see me at a conference, I may have had to pay the conference rate to to present there. So it's not like it's free. And
Yeah.
there's ways you can kind of talk around that as well. Like what I do now is I say, hey, I'm flying out here. It's costing me this amount of money. Like sometimes I fly across the country to do a conference. If I give you a book to raffle off or a couple of books to raffle off, can I just present? Yeah, sure. And hopefully people are nice about that. So present at every conference you can, not just national, but also state and local, and choose the ones where, decision makers will be there, or teams will be there. Well, they'll come back to you, Efren, and they'll go, like your teachers will say, hey, I just saw Eric Francis. We got to bring this guy in. And you're this administrator goes, who's Eric Francis, or something like that. And then we set up Zoom meetings like that. Number three, um, play your own music and put a different spin on it. There's a lot
Mhm.
of, be original with what you do. Put a different spin on it. Nothing is invented, but everything is innovated. Look, I did this questioning thing. It was something I did when I was a teacher. And then I found out, oh, there's actually a name to this called essential questions. And the reason why I wrote now that's a good question is because the definition of what an essential question was very broad, vague, interpreted different ways. So I said, okay, I'm just going to call them good questions. So that's kind of why I came out with that. Depth of knowledge is not mine. It's Norman Webb.
Mhm.
Um, but I saw out there that there was a lot of misinterpretation and miscommunication, and a lot of things that were about DOK is inaccurate. So at first it was, okay, let me explain to you why DOK is inaccurate. But now let me see what I can do with DOK. So I turned it into a method, a model for teaching and learning. I turned to an RTI. And you can take things that exist and just put a different spin on it. I mean, Marzano's taxonomy is a different spin than Blue's taxonomy. Yeah,
Mhm.
there, how many different teacher evaluation systems are out there? You got Marzano, you got Charles Danielson, or, how many times has PLC, someone tries to make a different spin on PLC, though I still stand by the original 4 questions by the DeFores. That's the simplest way to do it. So, but put your spin on it and honor who influenced you, because that's the other thing. The third thing you also got to remember: we're in this together. This is not a competition. Okay, you shouldn't have to choose questioning with me versus questioning with someone else. And in fact, it should be more so much a competition, it should be a collaboration. I've always pushed to one of my publishing companies, I'll say ASCD, you got a bunch of people who've written books on questions. Why aren't you making a questioning summit? You know, or, how can we collaborate? And I think sometimes, Efren, that's the hard part, because I want to collaborate. Look, my philosophy is, Iron Man and Captain America are great by themselves, but when they're the Avengers, they're epic,
Amen.
And if someone comes to you and says, hey, man, I want to collaborate with you, don't push them off. I've had that. I've had people like, they've had certain things like, they've had certain groups and everything. I'm like, man, I would love to be a part of this. And it's almost either sometimes I have like, yeah, come on in, open arms. Or sometimes you get the kind of blow off where you're just like, oh, well, I think we're good right now. Or, okay, well, you have to surrender everything you do to be a part of this group. No. I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you said to me, hey, Eric, I want to collaborate with you. Awesome. Great. I would love to be on this journey with somebody, or I want to collaborate with you. I'm like, well, okay, Efren, I'm not really sure what we could do together, but let's try to figure out what's your wheelhouse. What's my wheelhouse? Okay, let's do this. Okay. You know what can I do to support you? What can I do to put you out there? I mean, I'm always name dropping, and it's not because I know these people. It's because they do great work. And that's the thing. So I think the 3 thing is, number 1, don't quit your J job. Okay. Number 2, put your own spin on it. Okay. And you do great things in your classroom, but don't believe your own hype. Don't believe your own press. Okay. And number 3, be willing to collaborate. Be willing to be open. Be willing to like inviting, hey, I would love to work with you. And when you get to that point, be accepting. Be open to it. That's the big thing about it. And number 4, write a book. I mean, everyone's got a book now. It's not an idea. I mean, like everyone you talk to, like, oh, I got a book with this person. I got a book. There's so many different opportunities to write a book. Some people are publishing. You can publish with the big ones like Corwin and ASCD and Solution Tree, but then you got, the more, the smaller houses. Some people are just going on Amazon and putting it out there, and they're marketing the hell out of it. Great. Sorry, but it's just that's the thing. Figure out figure out who you are and figure out where you are. Why do you want to be in this space? And one of the books I really recommend is reading with Start You With Why, Find With What, Find Your Why. That really helped me a lot. That helped me a lot during the pandemic, starting with the Golden Circle. And I actually do a PD on this. It's kind of a social emotional thing where I say, find your why, and with a superhero analogy. So using Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, if you've heard of that, right? The whole
Yes.
yeah. So people usually we start with the outer circle. What do we do? How do we do it? Why do we do it? Okay. This asks, why do we do it? How do we do it? What do we do? When I do this PD, the Golden Circle, I say, as a superhero analogy, why are you putting on the cape and cowl? So every superhero has a motto. Like Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. Wolverine, I'm the best at what I do, but what I do is not very nice. Okay. Batman, I am the knight. Superman, I fight for truth and justice. So what I do with it, I tell people, I say, finish this statement, to blank, so that blank. So I will say, to challenge thinking so that people appreciate the joy of learning, okay, or the rigor of learning, or the joy of rigor. That's kind of my thing. That's my why. That's why I put up my cape and my cowl. Okay. How do I do it? Now, how do you do it? How do you live your why? How are you fighting, the battles? How are you fighting the crime of ignorance or crime of lack of education? Think about Batman. He has utility belts. He has Batmobile. Spider-Man has web slingers and stuff. Iron Man has those armors. Okay. So why? That's your mantra, your purpose. How? What are your tools? What are your talents? What are your gifts? And then you get to the what, and that's basically where you can say, like your Batman, you can say, "I'm Eric Francis," or you can put on your Infinity Gauntlet and go, "And I am Maverick Education." Snap your fingers, okay? So that helped me a lot during the pandemic to figure out who I am and why I am during this whole thing. That's what I'd also recommend to people. Read Start with Why and Find Your Why by Simon Sinek.
Wow, masterclass. Thank you so much, Eric. Let's take a momentary pause to recognize the Teach Better community.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
So, Eric, looking back in your career, like in Back to the Future, if you could go back at any moment in your past, and what will the Eric of today tell the Eric of back then?
What seems like will be hard right now is going to help you in the future. Okay, embrace the hard. You know, that's the thing I would probably really say. You know, there's a lot of people who've had hard childhoods. I can't say my childhood was hard, or traumatic to the level of some people, but it's kind of interesting, Efren, because there's all these things out there now about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I actually do a keynote on this where I actually challenge people where I say, when you look at my face, what do you see? And people will look and they'll see, and I'm like, not how I present myself, but what do you see? They'll see my color, my skin, they'll see my gender, they'll see, my maybe some people can pick up on the fact that, my sexuality or whatever. But though I say that, do you see that I'm the son of a man who lost his legs in a car accident? I don't know what it's like to have a dad who had legs. Do you see I have brother with special needs? Do you see that I'm a child of divorce? Do you see that I grew up in a mixed faith family? Well, my father was Jewish, my mom was Catholic. I like to make the joke to say, when it comes to guilt, I don't know whether to feel it or impose it. My siblings are interracial. My daughter is high performing autism. When people talk about, to me, what do you know about diversity and equity and inclusion? I like to say, come on over for dinner Sunday. I'll show you what it's like in my family, because my whole family, my dad passed away. I said, we are that family. And I think that's a lot of also kind of the core with it, because when I was younger, I grew up in the 80s. And the 80s was a very homogenous, conservative time. We didn't put our problems out there. Don't share what's going on with you with others. Don't share what's going on in the house. Keep it in the family. Keep it in the house. Now kids, they come to school. I mean, it's almost like, Boy Scout or Girl Scout badges on the thing. I'm this, and that's great. And I think that's the great thing about this generation, is that we are more sensitive and empathetic to people's differences. I think the harder part is the adults, where we grew up in the 70s and the 80s and the 60s, where we shunned difference. And that's what I felt like when I was in the 80s as a kid. I mean, my gosh, these kids all looked at me like, what's with you? You're so freakish, I mean, I grew up in a generation where SEL in third grade, and my teacher, I'll never forget, did this. They said, how many kids' parents here are divorced? 4 kids raised their hand. In the spring, I had to raise my hand as number 5. I mean, out of a 30 class. Now it's opposite on that. So I think that's the big thing I would tell myself. And that's the thing. It's funny. I was talking about something like said, like, if I go back in time, I said, I wish my experiences, I embraced them instead of running away from them. And that really has created a mantra I have, where I know a lot of people say it is what it is. I hate that phrase, because then what you're doing is, I say, well, you're accepting the suck. And if you accept the suck, then I don't want you to complain about the suck. It is what you make it. Okay. Tragedy is temporary. Okay. And you can decide whether your story ends as a Shakespearean tragedy or Shakespearean comedy. And if people go like this, they go, yeah, but you don't know what this person does. You don't understand. And then I said, oh gosh, it's traumatic. Okay, I get it. And everybody's trauma is different. You know, one person's trauma cannot be compared against another person's trauma. It's like comparing apples against apples. You know, you got a red Macintosh, you got a Delicious, you got a Granny apple. They're all apples, but they're different. And you can't say, like, you know, one is, you know, this, that, or the other thing. That's why I always say, why I said to you here today, who are you and why are you? Okay, I am who I am. There's a reason why I stand like Superman. Everyone makes, you know, they like to joke like, Eric, you stand with your chest tall out and you stand, you know, like this and everything. You know, I stand like I have a superhero emblem on my chest. That's because a man with no legs taught me how to stand. Okay. And you know, it's also a challenge for me right now because my father did not want to be seen as somebody who was handicapped. He didn't want me to look at him and go, that's my disabled father. He wanted me to say, that's my father. Okay. He didn't want me to look at my brothers who are interracial and say, those are your black brothers and sisters. They're your brothers and sisters. Okay. And they taught me to say, if that's what how they identify, they communicate that to you. So I look at you, Efren, I say, you're Efren. And I say, okay, so how do you identify? Who are you and why are you? You might say to me, you know, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other thing. And you can't jump to that conclusion. I mean, your last name is Martinez. Okay, am I going to jump to a conclusion that you're Hispanic? No. What if, you know, it's something else? Or jump to a conclusion that you're from this domain when it comes to, you know, your Latino heritage? No, I want you to tell me so I can say, okay, Efren, you are. And that's how I communicate. I come to you like that. Like I see you as Efren. And in this kind of climate, that's been kind of hard, especially for someone with me who's grown up with diversity and who grew up with someone who said, I don't want you to see me as your father who's a double amputee. I'm your father. Yes, I am disabled. I understand that. I realize that. I know you recognize that, but I just want you to see me as this person. I want you to see your sibling. And my siblings get mad at me because they're like, don't use me to push that, you know. Okay. I'm your sister. I'm your brothers. No, don't push that to give you validation or justification or even to prove to someone that you understand. I just want you to see me for me. And I say, who are you? And then they tell me. And then I'll say, okay, is part of your race a part of your identity? Yeah, it is, but it's not my driver, you know, or, you know, my dad, yeah, I'm disabled, but that doesn't, you know, it's it's not part of, you know, it's not my why. That's the big thing. So I think, you know I went kind of a roundabout conversation with that, but that's what I would tell myself as I was younger. You know, the hard will be your lessons. You know, live through the hard, and learn these three things. It is what you make of it. Tragedy is temporary, and you can decide how your story ends because you are in control.
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's what I'm going to tell my kids today. Embrace the heart. I think that's very well said. Eric, as we learn more about your wisdom, as you know, reading books is such a luxury. If you have to gift two books, one fiction and one nonfiction, which books would those be?
It's a good question. Nonfiction. Well, I said the Simon Sinek books. I can tell you one thing that really taught me a lot for nonfiction, as a leader, was the 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard. Really taught me how to deal with people. Really taught me, I mean, all these leadership books, you know, but really learning how to deal with people. Probably the biggest takeaway was he describes 4 different people. You know, there's people you can say, you got to do this. And this person goes, I'm on it. And then you got people who say, you got to do this and you got to start with this and you got to do this and you got to do this. And this is what I want to see. And then I'm on it. Okay. Then you got people who go, you can do this. It's going to be hard, but I'm here with you. And then you got people who are like, so you're doing it, right? So if I check on you're going to do this, right? I'm telling you, that really shaped me as a leader. So that I mean, I think because a lot of stuff I read now is more nonfiction than fiction. Another thing that really has impacted me greatly is, and people are gonna laugh. I audio taped. I had Audible of Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, and I've always
Beautiful.
just been fascinated by this guy's attitude. I wish, I mean, for so many different reasons. If you can wish you can be anyone else, not just only for physical, but also soul. Like, I'll say to my wife, like, man, I wish I was like Matthew McConaughey. She goes, yeah, so do I. But so it's like the whole thing, like his philosophy, and he actually has something he's doing. I think he's working with, this is his philosophy, his mantra, and I've been trying to be that. Like, how can I, have that kind of swagger like McConaughey, and go, all right, kind of have that laid back, because that's another great book. Not fiction. Wow, fiction. I go back to the classics. I mean, there's things for entertainment, and like, I don't want to like sound like, it's kind of funny because you want to sound like you're, intellectual. But man, I love the James Patterson novels, those airport reads,
Awesome.
the cross books. But man, I go back and read the classics, and this is why there was an English teacher. I'm like, okay, so how does this relate today? And I love like actually reading the classics. Like I love reading, and it's not how I spend my free time, reading, I'm reading Scarlet Letter, or reading Huckleberry Finn or stuff like that, or Great Gatsby. But, going back and just really taking away, like one of the things I love is, how can I make that and apply that to the real world? And how can I teach other kids? Like when I taught the Scarlet Letter, I asked them the question. I said, how does the Scarlet Letter address the theme of guilt stereotypically, socially, religiously, and psychologically through the four main characters? And then I asked them, why is the modern day Scarlet Letter TMZ? What are the similarities between Hester Prynne and Kim Kardashian? And how is that an American philosophy and ideal? And what they realized was that the Scarlet Letter is all about someone who took a scandal and took control of their scandal to where people forgot what the scandal was. They forgot what the A meant. They forgot it meant adulteress, and they thought the A meant Abel. Kind of like what Kim Kardashian did. She had a scandalous life, scandalous her origins, but now look at what she's created for herself. And the way that's basically is an American ideal and philosophy, my kids realized, is that, wow, I can take my mistakes and turn them into something better. That, don't hold me against me for my mistakes. Look at how I learned from my lesson. Reading Huckleberry Finn, really understanding is, that book has been people try to ban it since this day was published, as a language. And like I used to teach my kids, I said, why is Huckleberry Finn so controversial and why should it be banned? And they would say, because it's racist. I go, well, do you see how it's illiterate? No. Okay. Well, that's why first reason. Do you see how it supports juvenile delinquency or advocates for it? No. Okay. Do you see how it's anti-feminist? No. Okay. Well, these are all the arguments. So what are the arguments for banning Huckleberry Finn? And are those arguments valid or invalid? See how I'm giving it and I'm teaching it that way? And that's the thing. The other thing is The Great Gatsby. People look at it and they look at the theme of The Great Gatsby, but you look at The Great Gatsby, it is such a statement on the way we live. This guy got so much success and so much wealth, but man, all he wanted to do was have the woman he loved so badly accept him. And that's something, that's a larger theme. I mean, I get that as PED. Man, I got good stuff going on, but I'm always focusing on why is that person not accepting me in the conference? Why am I not keynoting? Why can't I just be content? Am I doing it for the right reasons? Gatsby, he accrued all that wealth, not because he wanted to, not because he could, because he wanted Daisy to love him. I tell that, to even kids, my daughter's age, when they're going through a breakup, it's like, man, you're good enough. You just may not be good enough. And it doesn't matter how much you do, you won't be good enough. And that's okay, because that's in their eyes, not in yours. So I would say go back and read, the classics, really take a different, perception of it. And, if you don't want to think, go read a James Patterson novel or go read a bunch of comic books. That's my thing. I mean, I see you're a guy Chewbacca shirt on, so I can tell you're a fan, you're a fanboy like me. So, like I'm doing a thing now in my 50s where like I'm going back and buying the old graphic novels of the comic books I grew up on and loved, the artists I loved, like George Perez and John Byrne. and John Buscema, or going to find old, like, the Avengers collections from the 70s and the 80s, which is when I really collected and loved it, or the X-Men or the Justice Leagues, or, Superman. Sometimes you just want to go and check your brain. And it's really funny because they're actually, you have to have, I mean, my gosh, you got to be a scientist to read the Fantastic Four or Iron Man these days and talk
Yes.
about, learning language. That's the thing too. I'm more of a movie guy, probably. So I watch a lot of movies, not lately because I don't think that they're good, but like I was talking to someone the other day, like, man, you need a thesaurus to go watch a John Wick movie. John Wick, Parabellum. Every kid's going into that. You ask a kid, go, so what does Parabellum mean? Why do they call it, the continental? Why, all these, the language in there. You're sitting there and go, wow, these are some real serious tier 2 words. And you got these kids who, they're, whatever social economic background they are, they're going to see this movie. Just take time, check your brain, but listen to it and learn from it. There's so many things. So I know that was a roundabout way. So my nonfiction books are the Simon Sinek books, 1 Minute Manager, Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights, and my fiction books are go read the classics, take something to do away from them, or just go, James Patterson novels, great airport reads, or go read some comic books. Just go have some fun.
Beautiful. I have to ask then, which one is the one movie that you will take with you to an island?
Oh gosh. So my 4 favorites of all time are the Godfather films. Now let's talk about a series. The first Jaws, Star Wars, and Rocky. Okay. Now I can tell you I'm not taking Jaws to an island because that's going to freak me out from going into the ocean. All right. I think I would probably take either Star Wars or Rocky, because those, A New Hope, okay, that's the thing. Giving, it's uplifting. It makes you, or Rocky. Here's a guy who's down and out, and he gets the opportunity in the world, and just, the great, feeling you get from it, the motivation you get from him. My gosh, if you watch a Rocky movie and then it's also like, all right, wait a minute, I gotta go work out. I mean, that's the thing. Or, so I think one of those movies I would take, probably Star Wars Episode 4, which I'm sure you're gonna like, seeing your shirt is on there. So yeah. I think I would take Star Wars, and I would sneak Rocky somehow off the boat.
Awesome. So, who is or who are your biggest influences?
One is my father, number one. My father, Fred Francis, without a doubt, he is my hero. God broke the mold after they made that guy. Lost his legs in a car accident at 20 years old. Went on to go and become one of the leaders in the civil rights movement for disabled. In fact, if I recommend this documentary, it's called Crip Camp, and it's about the civil rights movement for the disabled that grew out of a summer camp for kids who were born disabled. And they started the civil rights movement in the 1970s. 40 minutes in, you'll see a guy who looks like me with darker curly hair and 1970s mutton chops. He doesn't talk, because this was more about people who were born disabled. My dad became disabled. Again, the guy was Superman to me. He did things in a time. We see all these people doing all these great sports and great things and amazing things in wheelchairs. My dad did that in 1970s when the wheelchair was not aerodynamic, or not made out of fiberglass. They were the tanks. They were those big, and he did things like he biked in a marathon. He did his wheelchair in a marathon. That's why I'm actually kind of sensitive. There's this thing about equity. There's a poster out there that says equality is everybody gets a bike, and they show a person in a wheelchair. Equity is everybody gets a bike that fits them. And what they did was they put the person in a wheelchair in a bike where they can use their hands instead of their. Well, what if the person's a quadriplegic and can't move from the neck down. And what people don't understand about with wheelchairs, when you take them out of the wheelchair is part of their identity, is part of who they are. So what you're asking them is to surrender their identity so they can be like everybody else. That's not equity. Okay. Equity is allowing people, and my dad taught me that. Equity is not about making it so you're like everybody else. Equity is about making it so you can be who you are and have that opportunity, not that you're surrendering your identity or such. So my father, number one. Number two, and it's going to be kind of interesting, Eddie Van Halen. Okay. You could probably see from the background there, I got, an Eddie Van Halen Funko Pop. I got his little guitar there. I would love to do a thing, and I'm going to do this eventually. Teach like Eddie Van Halen. Okay. Where basically you have to realize, let's say it this way. This is the analogy I make. The standard is the song that all we teachers have to teach, all we teachers need to teach, and all the kids have to play. Okay. So if I say it's Eruption by Van Halen, that's the standard. Your kids have to play that, and you have to teach that. Most importantly, you got to believe the kids will eventually play that. Your curriculum is your guitar. Okay. So what the analogy I make is that the standard is the song, it's Eruption. This is what you need to teach. This is what you play. But Fender's going to sell your school district Eddie Van Halen guitars. Okay. And if you get these Eddie Van Halen guitars, you should be able to teach Eruption, and your kids should be able to play Eruption. Nah, not necessarily. Replace guitars with your curricular package, your IXLs or whatever like that. And I just lost their endorsement. But, no, you got to be Eddie Van Halen. You got to be able to play that song on any guitar, because your district, they might not be able to afford Eddie Van Halen guitars, but Gibson can come in and say, hey, you can play it on this guitar, or you get a knockoff and somebody says, well, these are like Eddie Van Halen guitars, but they're not really Eddie Van Halen guitars. Or they have guitars now where you put like a padlet on it, and you can program it to make the sounds. Okay, great, it can make the sounds, but can it play Eruption? Mm-hmm. And it's like a triangle. The standard is your song. The kids in the middle, that's your audience, because that's who's supporting you. And over here is your guitar, your curriculum. Over here is your instruction. If you depend upon your curriculum to play the song, triangle falls apart. If you say, forget the song, forget the curriculum, I know Van Halen, or I prefer Sammy Hagar over David Lee Roth, or you know what, Eruption's too hard, I'm going to teach them Cathedral. That's an easier thing. Triangle falls apart. So Eddie Van Halen's my second one. Gosh, my third, they're not real people.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. And this is going to be interesting. I want to explain this. Superman and Captain America.
Ooh, tell me.
Okay. Here you got Superman. He has the power of, amazing power. We can say the power of a god. And every day he's tempted. Every day he can give into temptation and take advantage of the power he has. Okay. And he doesn't. All right. And he looks at that optimism. He looks at that. It's very easy to gravitate towards a Batman because Batman's flawed. And we can relate to the flaws. And we can relate to, I relate to Superman because not because he's an ideal, but because of the potential of becoming flawed. And that's his inner fight that every day, there was actually one, I was like, finally someone captured it. And it was in a Justice League cartoon where he's pounding the heck out of Darkseid. And he goes, every day I'm tempted. I just want to let loose. And then I meet you and I'm grateful because finally I can, and he just pounds on it. And that's why everyone doesn't like Man of Steel, because at the end he ended up killing Zod. And you're like, no, that's not Superman. I mean, I wasn't bothered by it, but that's the thing. The other one is Captain America, again, for that sense of optimism, that sense of the great potential, the sense of what people don't really understand. And if you look at it from a broader, deeper context, and again, like I said, like the challenge thinking, this guy has the values of the greatest generation. Okay. The generation that came out of the Great Depression. And people call that the greatest generation because they experienced a depression and they lived through a war and they went on to do some of the greatest things. And that's what I look at, that basically, that core of heart. Some people may criticize me as like, okay, so you took the most, you know, milk toast, I guess, lack of a better word. But it's easy for me. I mean, when I was younger, I loved Spider-Man because I just wanted to always put on a mask and just kind of be what I wanted to be. And then you had the Peter Parker part side of me that was quiet and shy, but when I put on that mask, hid my insecurities. But now I really gravitate towards that. And it's kind of like a positivity, not a toxic positivity. So those are my three. My father, because the man taught me that, anything is possible. Lost his legs, went on to do great things, lived a hard life physically, but to the day he died, I mean, even when they took him off life support, his heart was still beating. Eddie Van Halen, just because, Eddie Van Halen knew his reputation, but he never ever bought his own press. He just wanted to play music. If you read the biographies on Van Halen, David Lee Roth wanted to be the rock star. Eddie Van Halen just wanted to play music. And in fact, there's a great book called Running with the Devil by Keith Monk, their tour manager, where it talks about Eddie used to cry. He goes, I just want to go home. Dave wants to be the rock star. I don't want to be the rock star. I just want to make music. That's kind of how I see, I don't want to be a rock star. I want to just teach. I want to spread the message. When I go to school districts, I say, I don't want to put on a rock show, 2 or 3 hours of my greatest hits. And then when you want me back on tour, to play your venue, I'll come back. I want a relationship with you. I just want to teach, so that one. And then again, Superman, Captain America, because they're optimism instead in a time of pessimism. And it's very, very easy to, embrace that suck and buy into it, but they have their ideals. And it's funny because I tell you to talk to my students that there's a lot of religious allegories about Superman. It's that, in fact, there was a book was called Once Upon a Time of Fantasy, and it talked about how pop culture was influenced by the tales of old times, of mythologies, of biblical references. And somebody compared Superman to the story of Moses. Which is interesting that, somebody, sent like Superman's, family sent him to space to go and, serve, his people and be a leader with that. Kind of like with Moses, sent him down the Nile, Pharaoh, and then, freed his people and such. Yeah. So those are the three.
Beautiful. I absolutely love that you brought superhero characters as influences. I have to say, to add to that, in the latest Marvel Universe movie where all the superheroes, the one that influenced me the most was Hulk. When at the end, right, Dr. Hulk, he says that he was able to gather his anger and control it, right? I struggle all my life with that, to controlling my emotions, and he's able to do both. And definitely there's a lot of characters that, although they are fiction, they are more real than many of the things that we actually live by.
You know what's really funny that you say that? I've been saying that to a lot of people. I get very emotional about stuff. I don't know whether it's because of my upbringing. I grew up in New York. In New York, we don't kind of just, we're not the South where we go, bless your heart. And that's not a compliment. Or we're not like, Midwest where it's like, okay, very nice. California where it's just like, whatever, man. West Coast, East Coast is very like, we're ready to fight. Okay. We're ready to we'll call it out. And that's the thing. And I have that. But that line in the Avengers, Dr. Banner, now it's time to get angry. Well, that's the problem. That's the thing, Cap. I'm always angry. That's the thing. And I think that's also a way to, even with our students, how can we teach them to self-regulate that? Okay. How can we realize you have these feelings? Okay. How can we teach you to say, can you control the Hulk? I have a joke where if I lose my temper or something, or I get upset with something, I go, crap, I got to go reset the days without incident, sign, and it's easy, But I think that's the thing, you know, looking at those, and what I try to do with it, you know, if I can give any kind of recommendations, like, you know, I'm like, okay, is this reality or is this my reaction? Okay, number one. Number two, this is how I'm feeling right now. All right. And when I talk to people, if I kind of get emotional or lose my cool with it, that's my trust to you, because Efren, I have to keep this kind of, you know, thing where I'll work with, you know, somebody, or I'll be professional with somebody. I'm like, hi, okay, I'm gonna be political, I'm gonna be, yeah, sure. And then I just go, you know, like that. And if I release that, I tell people, I said, that's my way of that. I trust you, where I can have that emotion. I gotta tell you the greatest thing, Efren, and I'm gonna be real. There are administrators who drop F-bombs. Okay. And I'll be in a professional meeting. I'm like, Maverick Education. Yeah, okay. Well, we should do this way. And the administrator go, you know, F to F, 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 F. I'm like, all right, cool. Now I can be Eric Francis, you know. And so this relation, I mean, I'll shake hands with me. I go, we just took this relationship to a whole different level. I have had times where I go, so clearly, I think we're understanding that I'm going to be working with you, because I don't think you'd be talking to me this way if we were going to work together. And I thank them for saying, because people go, oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to talk like that. And I said, no, the fact that you can talk like that to me as an administrator, as a superintendent, as a principal, it means that you trust me enough to let down your guard. Okay. So if I ever worked with you in your school and you started dropping F-bombs with me, I'm not going to say, oh my gosh, you're so unprofessional. I'm going to be like, cool, man, we just took it to a different level. And to me, from more of a personal thing, or even like making about myself, which I don't want to, I am so grateful that you feel that trust with me, where you can talk to me like that and be real. And that's the thing. So getting back to that Hulk thing, that is so ironic. And I really hope you and I continue this relationship, because I think
For
there's a lot
sure.
of things, besides the fact that you got Chewbacca on your shirt, you know, I got his Funko Pop right over there. You
Do
know,
you?
see, I got to keep the image. This is all my education books over here. Okay, I kind of pepper it when I got these tiles with my favorite band covers. That's Van Halen on the second shelf from the top. That's all Led Zeppelin. See, that's all my education books. Like, if we zoom in on it, you'll see Marzano, you'll see Wiggins and McTighe, you'll see Tomlinson, you'll see you'll see all the classic authors on there. You'll see my PLC books, you'll see my assessment books. See, but over there, those are my graphic novels. Okay, those are my albums I have over there, you know, and that's the thing. Those are my Funko Pops over there. I have on the top there the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. You see a couple here. There's Rocky and Apollo. There's a Luke Skywalker, and there's Eddie Van Halen on my Funko. But that's the thing. You're real, okay? You're real. If you're having emotions, that's real. Life, people become the Hulk. But again, that's the thing, Cap. I'm always angry. And he knew why he was angry. And he was able to take the brawn with the brain and put them together and become Smart Hulk. But he knows every single day that he can go back. And I can't wait till he does, because then we'll have World War Hulk as a Marvel movie. And that's going to be epic.
Oh my God, I can't wait. I can't wait. So, Eric, this is such a great conversation. How do you, I mean, I can't imagine being a keynote speaker and standing in front of the audience, or going to a school district and providing professional development. Psychologists call it imposter syndrome, that feeling that comes to all of us at some point, and we might feel that we're not good enough, that we're not as attractive enough, or whatever. How do you address imposter syndrome?
By showing them how good I am and letting them tell me how great I am. Okay. Now, think about what I just said here. And actually, that's something Walter Payton said, something like that. And I thought I heard Dwayne Johnson kind of like twist it, but somehow I got that in my head somehow. Mm-hmm. Show them how good you are and let them tell you how great you are. It comes off as hopefully it comes off as a confidence. Imposter syndrome, you know, I think that's a kind of a negative connotation to say that. And I think that's, you know, look, we all are not we're good at what we do. Okay. Everybody is good at what they do, but let someone else tell you how great you are. And you got to go in and realize you're not going to reach everybody. Okay. Um, and you got to go in and you just got to basically um, kind of have the understanding like, I'm going to share some things out there. Some people are going to like it. Some people are not. You know, it's kind of funny, Efren, because you say this is that I actually did something in the keynote just recently. I was in Idaho and I said, look, we're about 15 minutes in right now, and you have an impression of me right now. And look, I'm gonna be honest, some of you may not like me right now. Why? Because I remind you of your husband, because I remind you of your father, because I remind you of your brother, because I remind you of your boyfriend, because I remind you of your ex-husband, because I remind you of your ex-boyfriend, because I remind you of somebody that hurt you in your life, because I remind you of some celebrity you can't stand. Okay. What are you walking into this room in? Maybe you're just not here. You don't want to hear what I have to say. Maybe you got a speeding ticket on the way in. Maybe you got in a fight with someone in your family, your significant other. Maybe you're feeling lousy. Okay. As a PD person, I have to realize that in my audience. Okay. As a presenter, as a keynote presenter, as a workshop person, I got to go and realize that. The imposter syndrome is that I'm good at what I do. I know what I know. I know a lot, but I don't know it all. I think that's what prevents me from being that imposter syndrome. Like, man, this is what I know, but I don't know everything. And I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to listen. You know, every time I do a presentation on questioning or DOK, I take that experience and say, what did I learn from it? If I came to your school and talked to you, Efren, you'd be like, maybe you'll be like, beautiful, great, lovely. I will say, Efren, what was with that teacher over there? What's the story? Okay. Or, you know, I'll go and talk to that disruptive teacher because that's what happens sometimes in PD. You know, you got someone who's just like this, you know, it's when you do PD, it's not much different than being a classroom teacher. The only difference is the kids you're teaching are bigger and they're older. And if you give them that look when they're being disruptive, they can look at you like this. You can't. And they have the power to tell the principal, I don't want that person to come back. Like, now I want you to think about that from our kids' perspective. Because when I said to you that about who do I remind you of? And then everybody's looking at me in the audience like, where are you going with this? And I said, what if that's the reason why your kids are acting the way you're acting? What if you remind them of their mother and they have a bad relationship with their mother? What if their mother abandoned them and they have issues with that? What if they've never had a male figure in their life and you're the first male figure that they have as a leader, that they've been raised, you know, in a single family, either by their mom or their dad, and you're the first of that gender that they're encountering? What if you remind them of somebody who hurt them? You know, maybe that's why your kids are acting why you are. And that's what I do as a PD person. That gets me away from the imposter syndrome, where, you know, I am grateful and blessed to be able to do what I do. But I also have to be honest with myself and say that, number one, I don't know everything. Number two, I'm always willing to learn and change. You know, there's a lot of things I've changed, you know, about DOK and questioning. And that's why you see, when you see a book, that's your thinking at the time it was written. And then it comes out and you're like, oh, wait, my thinking has completely changed now, you know, because of your experiences. And number three, find out why your audience is acting the way they are and take it with a sense of honesty, but look at it this way. And somebody says, like, somebody once said to me, you know, I'm arrogant. And I said, why am I arrogant? And they told me what they felt. Well, that's their feeling. And if someone's going to say you're arrogant, that's their insecurity. Now, can I be arrogant? Yeah, when I feel insecure. When you talk about that imposter syndrome, if I'm coming off arrogant, that must mean I'm feeling insecure about something. Okay. But if someone calls you arrogant, that's their insecurity. Well, you think you know it all. No, I don't. I just know a lot. I don't know it all. Well, I already do this. Really? That's awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to your principal and I'm going to say, that's the person who needs to lead the initiative. You don't need me to come in. They're doing it already. No, please don't do that. Don't do that. Okay. That's the thing. Abraham Lincoln said a great thing. Am I not destroying my enemies by making them my friends?
Mm-hmm.
And that is probably one of the most powerful things. And that's what I try to do as a person. But at the same time, I'm not going to, stick with if you're rude during a presentation, I'll call you out. If you are unprofessional, and Efren, I'm going to tell you straight, and not really people talk about this, and I'm going to have a podcast and I'm going to ask people like, hey, what was one of the worst things you had as a presenter and how'd you handle it? I have had some of the rudest people in my presentation, and I had to go, well, did I trigger something in them? Did I remind them of somebody? Okay. At the same time, you don't have a right to be unprofessional, and you don't have a right to be rude. And, if you're being forced here, I'm sorry, that's not my fault. I got called, or when people say, when was the last time you're in the classroom? Oh no, my favorite one is this, is that, what do you know about teaching fill in the blank? I'll go like this to you. Absolutely nothing. But I know how to teach a standard, which is what I'm here to do. Okay. So, and that's the thing, is that, just understand that. That's, I think, sometimes the imposter syndrome. You know what you know, but be honest about what you don't, and be willing to learn. If someone's acting that way towards you, figure out why. Look at why, ask them, so what is it? What can I do to help you? And if they're just going to be, lack of a better word, a jerk, call them out, in the most professional way. I have done that. I have said, my way of saying this, I go, so what would you do if you had a student who acted towards you the way you're acting towards me right now? And Efren, I have done this. They've gone like this. I wouldn't put up with that. I would just send them right to the office. Good. That's where I'd like you to go during this professional development. I'd like you to go to the office. I have had administrators who had teachers, and people are going to go like, how dare you? How dare you? But I'm going to tell you straight right now. You asked me about what it's like on the other side of the lens. It's hard because I'm coming in. You have me sometimes for 2 hours. And in that 2 hours, I have to completely change your philosophy and approach to education. And I always joke around saying, after that, I'm going to look for a body of water and walk on the top of it. Okay. You came in. I have to be empathetic. People know how much we get paid. And here I have these teachers who are not getting, are struggling, to make ends meet. I have to be sensitive to that. And I think that's, getting back to that, that's how I get around the imposter syndrome, is that, Dave Schmidt wrote a great book with a great title called Bold Humility. And I think that's what, when I read that book, and because I always wanted to put a word to it, and I said to him, I said, Dave, you put a word to the feelings that I'm trying to have with bold humility. That's what I try to do. Now, some people may say, hey, I've seen you present. I've seen you in action. You don't really do what you talk. Okay. Well, why am I acting that way? Okay. Maybe it's because I love my thing that I do so much that passion can be overwhelming. Maybe I am feeling insecure. And when people feel insecure, that's when the arrogance comes out, because arrogance comes from a place of insecurity. If you call me arrogant, that's on you. That's your insecurity, not mine. So that's how I get past imposter syndrome. Know you know a lot, know you're good what you do, but let them tell you how great you are. I mean, Everett, I can't tell you how many times I've had administrators say to me, well, that was wonderful. That was great. And I'm thinking in my head, go, really? That sucked. And it sucked because of me. Like I didn't get through that one person, or man, I could have done so much better, and because I'm my worst critic. And I think that's also what gets me about my imposter syndrome too, is like, I don't think I'm great, at everything I do. And there's times I present where if people tell me it's great, that's great. But I can tell you, like, I get evaluations where people will say, like, he was this, he was that, and they're personally attacking, or it's like, someone said, well, you came off as a blank. I mean, I had someone say to me, well, somebody said you're a blank. And I said, wow, that was professional. I can't even think about saying that about someone who does that. And I think that sometimes we got to also kind of look at ourselves, about how we're coming off with things. I just had worked with a school, where somebody told me, I'm not going to say who, that they got their principal evaluations. They had teachers who say she should quit. They had teachers say she needs to leave. She needs to go. Where's that social emotional learning when you do stuff like that? Where's that social emotional learning? Where is that empathy? Where is all that stuff we call for when you're doing stuff like that? Well, it's not me. Yeah, well, someone on your staff is. Well, that's why we need social emotional learning. Absolutely right. But we got to practice what we preach too.
Amen. Like what a masterclass this has been. Let's transition then to the productivity. And my first question is, Erik, why Maverick Education?
The name or the company?
The name, the company, that behind the scenes before we see the professional development. Like, tell us about constructing that idea that came into fruition.
Well, I didn't want to call it Erik Francis Consulting because then it becomes me. Okay, I wanted to give like create an entity and that identity with it. The original thing was going to be called Prometheus Education. And that's always what I wanted to do as a film producer. I always wanted a film company called Prometheus Pictures. And you want to talk about arrogance and talk about high inflated ego. Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to the people. Okay, in the Greek mythology. And then I was sitting in my cubicle, because that's what they gave you at the Department of Education, coming up with names. One of my favorite movies is Top Gun. So it's funny because I say Maverick Education, everyone goes, you jumped on the Top Gun Maverick chain. I'm like, no. When he jumped the couch, I never jumped off the train, guys. I mean, I was always a Tom Cruise fan. And at the time, John McCain, senator out here, he was known as the Maverick. And so that was sticking in my head. And one of my coworkers said, well, why don't you call yourself, call the company Maverick Education? And I played with it. And then I dropped the C because I spelled my name Erik. And the first three letters, MAV, are the name of my daughters, Amanda, Madison, Avery. So I got to be able to incorporate that. So Maverick Education came out. The why behind Maverick Education, or the how behind it, is that I'm a one-person entity. I don't have an assistant. I don't have people presenting, what I do. And really, it's, again, that mindset I told you. You wake up every morning, you don't have a job, okay? You got to either get a job, work the job you have, or create a job and convince people to have them work with you. That's the thing that kind of really keeps it going. That's the thing behind Maverick Education. You also have to have a really strong financial plan. I recommend, here's another thing, nonfiction. I recommend reading Dave Ramsey's books. Okay. Dave Ramsey, I got out of debt, tremendous debt, starting my own business, because Dave Ramsey says, if you have credit, you shouldn't have a savings. Okay. You need to take your money and pay off your savings. So Efren, you're working at a district and you consult on the side. I would recommend taking that money and paying off whatever debt you have, getting to a certain point in your bank account where you have this. So what my whole thing was, I wanted to get it to a certain amount. And then I got to a certain amount and said, okay, now I can pay off this debt. And then I paid it off. I still had some money in my account. And instead of saying, okay, now I got free money. No, I don't. I have debt. So now I'm paying what I paid on that other debt I just paid off. I'm paying against the interest. I'm paying that down. Okay, so now the total is going down. Okay, I'm at a point now where I have this money. Now I can pay off that. Okay, well, no, you still got that credit. Not that you have free money, available. Pay off that other debt and get it. I got out of debt by going into my own business. And that's the other thing about it. Save your money if your phone, just in case your phone stops ringing, they say 6 months. I like to say 8. Okay. When the pandemic hit, all of us who do professional development, we all got torpedoed. I mean, if you were a ed tech consultant or professional development provider, oh my gosh, you became like hugely successful. Okay. Nobody wanted PD on questioning or depth of knowledge. Everyone wanted to know how you turn on a computer. What's this thing called the internet? And then it became about, okay, we want to focus on the academic rigor. We want to focus on the social emotional support. So I got torpedoed, but luckily I saved enough money. So if my phone stopped ringing for a certain amount of time, I was okay. A lot of people I know, they went into serious debt.
Wow.
So
Wow, that's such a great advice. Something that usually people don't talk about is like how to address your finances. So being a one man show, it entails for sure a lot of organization that we don't get to see. So what should we know about how you plan your week, your events, your scheduling, your calendar? What should we learn?
wake up, get to work, take a break around 10 or 11 o'clock, go work out, and then be done with your day.
But how do you do your calendar? You use Google Calendar? Do you use
Well, I use my iCal.
your iCal? Okay, and any tips that you any suggestions? And I mean, this seems like very like everybody knows, but you'd be surprised. A lot of people don't know how to truly organize themselves. Any advice we should have in organizing yourself, or any lessons you have learned?
I think pace yourself more than organize yourself. Don't burn yourself out. That's the big thing. I think that's the big thing, is that you got to pace yourself. You got to pace your time. You got to take time away. You know, can't work 24 hours. That's the
Yeah.
big thing. I mean, I'm not a very organized person. I'm going to admit that to you. I'm not a very, like, chaos is my order. Okay. And really, it's just like I wake up at 5 a.m. And I call it West Coast stockbroker hours, because they wake up and they go to work when the bell rings at Wall Street, which is around 8, 9 o'clock.
Mhm.
And you go work from 8 to 5 to about 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock. Then I'll go take a lunch break. Then I'll go check my brain. I'll maybe binge watch a show, an episode, or I'll go work out or something. Then you come back and then you get to work with it. Pace your day. Like, I start my day off writing my books, writing my next book, producing a PD. Around 10 o'clock, I stop writing, and then I go get lunch, or I go and do some things, or, sometimes maybe earlier if I know schools are open or such like that. Make time for lunch, make time to work out. That's a big thing. You got to be not just healthy in mind, you got to be healthy in heart. Okay. But, then you go back, in the afternoon, you can go and do stuff. I mean, I put in about 8 to 12 hours a day, including weekends. And what you got to understand, I mean, there's some people who say, I'm not going to work on the weekends. I'm not going to, you got your own business. There's no days off. There's no days off. I mean, and you got to be willing. And if you show people you're willing, you'll get all the work. Okay. I worked with a group in Singapore, and they want me to do virtual presentations now. I have to wake up 2 a.m. to do those, because it's day over there, but it's like 2 a.m. here. They once scheduled me on, what was it? Wednesday of Thanksgiving Eve. And I had to wake up 2 a.m. and do a PD on Thanksgiving Eve. I go, it's Thanksgiving Eve here. And they go, yeah, we know, we don't celebrate that over here in Singapore. I go, yeah, touche. All right, there you go. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You have to understand there's no days off, but at the same time, you can't be so, again, remember I told you that thing, like, you got to be able to take off the mask, and that's the thing, Efren. That's why I worry about sometimes some people who do what we do, because they put their life on social media so much. It's like, I'm drinking my coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, it's like, and I'm not making fun of, I'm just making fun light, and I'm being satirical, because satire is about changing behavior using humor. You got to turn it off, man. And you got to also be sensitive. And look, Efren, there's a lot of us who make a lot of money doing what we do. And one of the things that I try to do, and we're connected on social media, is I try not to show, like, you know, the rewards of what I have. Okay. Like I don't show my house. I don't show that I got a certain type of car or something like that, because you got to be sensitive to your audience, you know? And so
Yeah.
when I see people like, oh, I'm here and I'm like doing a PD and I've done it too, you know, a PD in Hawaii or a PD in whatever, you got to be kind of sensitive because you got that person who's sitting, you know, in freezing cold, you know, rural, whatever, or inner city, whatever. And there you are, you're doing PD for them. You're doing that. And like, oh, look at the wealth of it. I used to have a problem when I used to travel place for PD. I used to feel very, very sensitive about taking advantage of where I was because I was there to work. I didn't want to like go and take advantage of the fact that I'm at this thing. And I got to tell you, and I'm going to be extremely honest with you. When I see sometimes people who do what we do and they're up there and they're showing, look at these Nikes I got, and it's really expensive. And it's like, how do you think that teacher feels who's making $30,000, $35,000 a year, driving Uber at night or working in a restaurant or, you know, working 2 or 3 jobs to get ahead? And you're coming to their school district and telling them, you know, you got to be better for kids. You got to do better for kids, you know, every day. I mean, and they're in the classroom every single day. We're not. And then we're, you know, we get paid a tremendous amount of money sometimes to come. And then we're online going, wow, look, I got these Nike sneakers. Wow, look, I got floor seats to this, you know, basketball game, or I got, you know, what do they call it, the booth, or you know, the loge seating for when I go see football. You got to be really sensitive about that. And that's the thing about, you know, when you talk about with time, and I know I kind of did everything, but I think that's the thing, is that you got to pace yourself, but you also got to be real. Get off social media. You know, you don't have to document every moment of your day, you know, and there was an old Saturday Night Live skit, and I'm going to go find it, where these high school kids, they were trying to do these profound things, and they go, they joke around. They go, I just got to Starbucks. Like. I just bought a new shirt. Like. I'm going to the zoo. Like. And that's what we're becoming as he's presented. And I'm sitting there going like, what are you doing? You know, why? I mean, I don't want to brag. I mean, it's funny when people come out and visit me, they go, oh, wow, you got this. You have, I'm like, yeah. You know, it's like, why? Because it was a necessity. But, you know, it's not like, don't show your opulence. I mean, if you have friends, that's what Facebook's for friends. Show it with your friends. But if you got a public thing like, you know, Instagram or Twitter, and you're bragging about, oh, look at the workouts I'm doing, and I'm not calling out anyone particular, but if you know who you are, if you think I'm talking about you, then maybe I am. But, and I'm going to say this, Efren, because it's got to be sensitive about it. You got to be sensitive because you're making a lot more than a teacher does. Okay. And they know it. And sometimes there's that resentment because you come in and they're like, hey, I'm making this amount of money and I know how much my district's paying you for to do that. And you show it off. That's really insensitive. I'm sorry. You know, that's really not being sensitive to your audience. That, you know, you got to be humble. That bold humility that Dave Schmidt talks about, you know. And you said to me, how do I schedule my day? I'll tell you how I schedule my day. I don't put that I had, you know, sushi today for my lunch after a hard day of working. Okay. That's not the message I want to get out there. So I think that's the thing, is that, you know, start first thing in the morning, give yourself some time to go and get lunch, go work out and everything, and get off social media. That's the big thing.
That's such a great advice. It took me a long time to learn that. Recently, I deleted social media from my phone because I was finding myself posting impulsively, and it's so unproductive. And now I feel that I can be present and have actual conversations with the people in front of me rather than being on the phone scrolling. What a great advice.
The thing is this, I'm going to tell you straight, and I'm going to be honest. I used to do it. I used to have a thing on Facebook, up in the air. Okay. And part of it was because I had an elderly aunt who lived in Florida, and she she monitored Facebook like a 15-year-old girl, even though she was 80. I mean, it was so much that with social media that my father was alive, she doubted that my aunt was actually doing stuff on social media. He thought it was her son doing it, who was younger. And she's like, what? You don't think I could do that? And we're like, no, because you do it like a 15-year-old girl. Like she would take those tests on Facebook and go, I came out as a genius. Yeah. And you also got your identity stolen. So I would do stuff like that. And I would say up in the air, because that's what the life was like with that movie with George Clooney, Up in the Air.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you straight right now, it got to the point where I was bragging. There are times when I share on Facebook, like my book is ranked like this on Amazon. Is it a business promotion thing? Yes. Do I also know I'm kind of bragging and I kind of want people to say, oh, by the way, I am relevant or something like that? Yeah. I really think social media has done, we talk about, the benefits and the consequences of it. I really think when it comes to education, there's some educators who are like, oh, you got to get on Facebook, you got to get on Twitter, you got to get on Instagram. I think it loses our credibility. I think it loses kind of like who we are as a person. It's kind of like even news reporters. Like, I want you to report my news. I don't want you to be the news. I don't care if you got your hair dyed. Okay. I understand that we live in a society like that a little bit right now, but not every single day part of your day is on social media. And when I see us educators, those of us who are presenters, and we really do things where it doesn't become about sharing, it becomes about showing off. And yeah, you may have a lot of people who like. But are people respecting you? And that's the thing you asked me about. I don't, someone said, is it better to be loved or is it better to be feared? Or is it better to be loved or better to be hated? I'd rather be respected. And I think social media, and there's some people who really push it, that they'll even tell us as authors, you got to get on social media. You got to have this thing. And I do stuff on Twitter. That's where Maverick Education is. That's what I like to say. That Maverick Education is Twitter. But I take off the mask on Facebook. And if you're my friend on Facebook, I'm inviting you in to trust you. And on Facebook, I get to be who I am. And I may say something sometimes that will kind of raise your eyebrows and make you go, or even piss you off. But I'm inviting you in, like that Hulk analogy, to say, you're my friend. Don't use that against me. And I've had people use that against me professionally. Sure. And I'm like, I trusted you to be in here. I thought you accepted me as a person, not as this face. Okay. I've been called out sometimes. We're like, wow, you really called out so-and-so. Or people say, were you talking about me? I'm like, well, I wasn't directly referencing you, but if you feel like I'm talking about you, maybe you need to look inside yourself. And even right now in this conversation, Efren, I hope I'm not being unprofessional. I'm trying to be honest.
Not at all.
Yeah. That I really think a lot of us who are professional education specialists, presenters, we really need to be sensitive about this thing. I can tell you right now, there are a lot of people who are getting turned off by the people you see who are doing this, that they're like, what the heck? I mean, you don't see, Jake McTighe posting his workout videos. Okay. You don't see that Robert Marzano is, sitting courtside at a basketball game. You don't see, Carolyn Tomlinson or even Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry, all like the people who are really like these respected, valued people in education, pandering it to where, like, look, I woke up in the morning, like, I just had breakfast, like, it was a bagel, like, I had salmon on it, like, and I'm wearing these $150 Nikes while I'm doing it, like. We need to really be real, and we need to really look at what we're doing. And if you look at, and when you say to me, who are the people I admire, so I admire those educators who are not becoming brand ambassadors. I admire the ones who are educators, who are doing the work, who are serving the work. And they look at really, because as teachers, as educators, what we do is a service. And at some point, and I had to do this, are you serving yourself or are you serving others?
Boom. That's awesome advice. Thank you so much. Let me ask you a couple of more questions. I know I'm over taking your time. When you sit down to design and write your professional development and or write your books, what happens behind the scenes? Do you put music? Do you do some sort of routine before you start actually doing the work? What should we know?
I always want to try to make it fun and approachable. I look at presenting, it's like a spectrum, and it's funny, some people who kind of push my book and my work, they don't like it. At one end, you got the professor, and at the other end, you got the pro wrestler. The professor is the academic and quote the research and that, and the pro wrestler is good with the stick and can make the offs. You got to figure out how you can be in the middle. I like to say that I can quote the research like Robert Marzano, but I can lay the smackdown like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And you got to find the middle of it. All right. That also makes you approachable. When I write, I do a lot of stream of consciousness when I write, which is not great. It's not an easy process. Writing is like, it's a labor of love. And, you write something and then, it's just like, it's kind of like with even my presentations. Like, I don't come in with a script. And it's funny, with schools will say to me, well, can I have a printed copy of your agenda? And I'll say, no. And I go, why? I go, because I don't know what I'm going to do from 1 minute to the next. I know where I'm going to start. I know where I'm going to end. But where I go with it depends upon my audience. So when I write, I have the idea. I flesh out the title of the chapters. They change. They meld, they combine. It's hard because the publishing companies I publish for, they want research and citations. It's not, manifesto. It's not, mission statements. It's not, it's research, but it's not like your term paper or like your doctorate. So I have to take a lot of time doing that, pull in the names. Another thing I do is that if there's somebody I know who's a colleague of mine, I want to highlight their work and how I can show their work relates to what I do. Maybe that whole collaboration thing. So I'll call up, colleagues and friends of mine and say, hey, I'm writing about this. Your specialty area is literacy, or your specialty area is gifted and talented. How can I incorporate this, your research into my book, and show how it can be applied to this? It's not stealing or taking. It's basically recognizing. So with the presentations, that's a lot because, I like to say that I try to produce presentations like a George Lucas, Jim Cameron movie, with a lot of animations. I try to throw some personality into it. I try to make it, funny, kind of like, oh my gosh, did he just make that reference? Like with the DOK wheel, I have a thing where I explain why the DOK wheel is inaccurate, which it is. And I tell the story, and then I show a clip from Friends where Joey goes, "You got bamboozled," and Chandler goes, "No!" And that's why I tell them what happened with the DOK wheel. Or I'll show that the DOK wheel was actually derived from the Bloom's Hot Wheel. And I said, so now you know this. So that's why at the end of this presentation, I'm hoping we do this. Talk about Marvel. I bring in a clip where Tony Stark snaps his fingers with the Infinity Gauntlet, and the DOK wheel disappears. And I said, we're going to snap that thing out of existence. We're going to put on our Infinity Gauntlets and snap that thing out of existence. And really a lot of it, so producing it is a lot of time. If I showed you my files here, it's a Diary of a Madman. I have presentations and it names every different place I presented at over the last 11 years because I never do this. I might use the same slides, but I never do the same presentation more than once. Same gist, but because what you also want to do, and you want a secret with it, you don't want it to give you like, okay, I already seen that. You want it to be where, because there's sometimes you go see like a keynote or presenter and you can time it. I mean, I do sometimes some things when some people I know keynote, I go, okay, we're at the 25-minute mark. Here comes this video. And people go, what? I go, okay, we're at the 37-minute mark. Here comes the tear that comes out of her eye. Oh my God. It's like, how do you know? Because you've seen it once, you have to see it again. What I try to do is, even like when I do like a day, like a summit, or I have the same session multiple times, I'll put a little bit of a twist on it and I'll do something I didn't do in the other presentation. And then so when they get together, they say, hey, Eric Francis showed us this. Well, Eric Francis told us that. He didn't show us that. Well, wait, Eric Francis showed us that. He didn't show any of us that. Then they'll go to you. Efren, we got to get Eric so he could see everything that, and that's also kind of a trick with it. So, and you're presenting, don't ever present from a script. Like I always like to say, like people say, what's your presenting style like? It's like Robin Williams. You know, it's kind of like the way I'm talking to you right now. Like, you know, it's funny. Like my daughter, we were listening to the Quentin Tarantino audiobook about film, and she says, "Dad, when Quentin Tarantino talks about film, that's how you talk about education." You know, with that passion, that reverence. So that's kind of like my presidency style. It's like a Robin Williams thing. Because Robin Williams, you ever seen him in concert? He knows what the joke he's going to tell. He knows where he's going to go, but he does not know how he's going to get there. And then, you know, he'll throw it out there, do something, and just like, you know, he'll never do the same thing twice unless it work, or he'll throw something out there and say, oh, okay, let me try this. And same with Quentin Tarantino. When you hear him talk about movies, the passion of it, you kind of sit there and you're like, wow, this guy's really, really strangely passionate about it. But it's like, wow, he's passionate about it. You know, you can tell he really loves what he does. So that's the thing. When it comes to a book, because a lot of people, I was just at a speaking and learning forward about this, about publishing a book. And somebody said to me, you know, well, I want to write about this, but everybody's already written about that. And I said, well, what are they not said in these books? And they went like this. I go, that's your book. Okay. So when you read those books and you go, I really wish they went there, that's your book. Okay. Right. A lot of people wrote a book on questioning. What was not out there? Wow, they're really not. That's my book. I'm writing a book on inquiry right now. There's a lot of books out there. Okay. What are these books? What are these inquiry books like? There's most of it is a very, very abstract, social emotional. I like to say sometimes some of the books are like Doug Henning from the Magic Show, if you remember him. Like, magic is a wonderful thing. Inquiry is a wonderful thing. And if you do this thing with inquiry, it will be a wonderful thing for your kids. And I'm trying to write something where it's like, okay, so let's talk about the intentional planning and the relationship of inquiry and questioning. You know, there's a lot of great books out there that say this will get you into an inquiry activity, or this is a great inquiry strategy. But what I'm trying to write is a book that, like, okay, this is really what intentional inquiry is. The Socratic method. Socrates didn't have people in the Colosseum have an inner circle and outer circle, assign people roles, and run it, manage. He used to just walk in and ask a question and let them banter about themselves. That's true inquiry. That's that's the thing. So if you got that book, Efren, and you're looking at it, like what's the area you want to write about? You want to write a book?
I would love to write something about emotional intelligence and school principals.
Okay. There's a lot of things right now out there about SEI. There's a lot of things out there about emotional intelligence. A lot of things out there about school principals. What is it that they're lacking in those books? You don't have to tell me right now, but that feeling you have right now, that's your book. Okay? That's your book. Because that's the thing, is that it's very much like right now, there's so much flooding the market about certain topics that people, it's oversaturating. Like, I like to compare it. The whole transition that went from academic rigor to SEL was like when 80s heavy metal bands got overtaken by grunge. Okay. So you had these people come in with this new form of music and this new look. All right. And so all the 80 heavy metals bands, they washed the gunk out of their hair. They changed their clothes from spandex and tight, bright shorts and tight, bright pants to flannel and baggy jeans. And they all went from to you know, and then what happened was that what was alternative or what was different became mainstream. You know, when all of a sudden you couldn't tell the difference between, you know, this band, that band, or that band, or when JCPenney's selling your grunge wear, you know, that's kind of what happens a little bit with it. My suggestion, recommendation to everyone right now is don't follow the trend, put a different spin on it, and basically try to bring back what is out there in a new way. So like, if you think about it, when grunge, the response to grunge music, I like trying to make a lot of music analogy. The response to grunge music was the Spice Girls, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Britney Spears, and Christina Aguilera, which was a concept that was 80s pop music, which before that was a concept that was 60s Motown. Okay. But it came back with a different spin. All right. You saw in the 2000s more bands that were paying homage to ACDC, paying homage to Led Zeppelin, paying homage to classic rock, and you had bands like Jet, or you had bands like Wolf Mother that came out. Right now, I'm going to say right now, this is a prediction. There's a return to rigor right now. Okay. And there's a lot of things that when something becomes too popular, people start to get critical of it. And people, unfortunately, are becoming critical of SEL. Mm-hmm. And it's not fair. It's not right. But it's how we're presenting SEL. It's how we're, putting out there the message of SEL, is that people, there's going to become a return to rigor. But I don't think we should return to rigor. I think we need to redefine rigor. That's what I'm actually trying to do in my work. Like, I have a thing now I'm calling redefine rigor with depth of knowledge. And it's trying to explain, what does that mean? And breaking that traditional mode, because rigor traditionally means hard. And if I'm basically like, you're sounding like Professor Snape or the teacher in Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall. You can't eat your pudding if you don't eat your meat, And then we said about rigor, we went to this traditional method where, is it about the content or is it about the cognition? It's not. It's about the context. So what I'm trying to do now is saying there's a return to rigor, and I'm seeing a lot of schools dust off their DOK wheels. I had a school, I heard somebody say, we're going to teach math like it's 2018. But it's not, I mean, like, it's not 2018, it's 20. And that's the thing, is that be creative moving forward. Okay. Be creative moving forward. Say, we're going back to this. Rick Wormelli does a great job with this, the way he does things with differentiation. He once said in a presentation, he's very big influence on me. He said, the pendulum swings this way, the pendulum swings this way, and now it's swinging both ways. We need to kind of go like this and just go, here it is. So I know we're coming to the end, but I want to basically give kind of some things before we leave.
Yes.
To change your mindset for next year. Okay. I want you to ask yourself this. With your learning targets, are you hitting the target, but are you hitting the bullseye? Okay. And I do this thing where I do this thing with archery, where when I deconstruct standards for depth of knowledge, I make the cognition column red, the content column blue, and the context column yellow. And those are the colors of archery. Because if you look at an archery target, you got blue, red, yellow's the bullseye. Okay, so what's the blue? That's the stuff. So if you look at your standards, you look at all the content words in your standards, you write that in the blue column. Then you say, okay, what do the kids have to do? Those are all your verbs. So you'll see, like, maybe there's more than one verb. That means there's two objectives they have to achieve. Or maybe there's one verb. But what do they got to do with all that other stuff? Well, you got to attach verbs to that. But what exactly and how deeply they have to do it? So I'll give you an example. If I had to fluently multiply multi-digit numbers using a standard algorithm, if you deconstruct that with the stuff, you have whole numbers, standard algorithm, multi-digit, multi-digit, and even multiplication, because it says multiply. So that's my stuff. That's where we live as teachers. We know our stuff. What do the kids have to do? Multiply what? Whole numbers. What do they have to use? Standard algorithm. But what do I got to do with all that other stuff? Well, I got to define, describe what that stuff is. But what exactly am I multiplying? Whole numbers, multi-digit fluently. What if I said that's what it means to demonstrate proficiency? Use standard algorithm. Now, the standard's changing from the to a. That means more than one. But then you got to define, describe what those terms are. So that's what I mean by we're hitting the target, but are we hitting a bullseye? Here's the other thing I want to leave everybody with. Next year, none of your kids are grade level. I'll tell you right now, none of your kids are grade level. Do you have the same kids next year? You have the same kids next year that they were they in? So if you're teaching sixth grade, okay, were those kids that are coming into your class, were they sixth graders last year? No. Then they're not at grade level. You need to figure out how far they are from grade level. What determines grade level? The academic standard. This is what it means to demonstrate proficiency in math using ratios and rate reasoning. Okay. How far are your students from that standard? Can they do they know what ratios are? No. Do they know what rate reasoning is? No. Do they know what fractions are? Yes. Okay, good. Let's start there. You know how fractions are part of a whole? Yes. That's the same thing as ratios. Oh, okay. So a ratio is a fraction. See how I did that? That's how we're going to combat this thing called learning loss. Okay.
Yeah.
We all say the kids have learning loss. Well, what'd they lose? Well, I don't know. They can't multiply. Well, what is it exactly they can't do with multiplication? They don't know their times table facts. Okay, great. They know 2 times 3 is 6. Do they know why? Because if I know why 2 times 3 is 6, because I added 3 to itself 2 times or 2 to itself 3 times, I could tell you what 542 times 398 is. You know what it is? 542 added to itself 398 times, or 398 added to itself 542 times. Well, I need an answer. Okay, well, there's 8 different ways to do that. Which way works best for you and why? So my 2 messages is this. Number 1, we're hitting the target, but are you hitting the bullseye? And number 2, none of your kids are at grade level next year, and that's okay. Use the standard to find out how far they are, find their strengths, and build on them so they can rise to, reach, and go beyond that bar.
Wow, I never saw it that way. Find out where the student is missing in the terms of the standard and go from there.
It's such a simple thing. And it's so funny.
Wow.
I do this with adults. I say, here's a high school standard. I go, and I did this with a group of kids. This one of the objectives said, explain why a non-zero rational number, and the product of a non-zero rational number and irrational number is irrational. So explain why the product of a non-zero number, rational number, and irrational number is irrational. It's a lot of stuff going on there. You're like right now going, huh? I go, how many of you guys can do that? None. Okay. Do you know what a rational number is? No. Do you know what an irrational number is? No. Do you know what irrational means? No. Do you know what rational means? No. Okay. Do you know what a non-zero number is? Yeah, 5. Awesome. Great example. DOK2. But what is a non-zero number? It's any number that's not 0. Okay, good. Let's start there. Now I just cheered at the kindergarten from high school. What is an example? 5. What can I do with 5? Well, you can add it. Okay, properties of operations. And what else? You can count to 5. Okay, good. And get a concrete number and just stop. Can you measure 5? Yes. Can you find a number line? Yes. So here's your basic rule. Okay, now everyone think of your number that's not 0. What if I put a negative sign in front of it? Would it still be rational or not? Does it meet the 4 simple rules? Yeah. So what do we know about rational numbers? They're negative numbers. They're rational. So rational must means what? It makes sense. So what does irrational mean? Doesn't make sense. Okay, what's the number doesn't make sense? Fractions. Okay, now I got to tear it back down to 3rd grade. What's a fraction? Part of a whole. You take the denominator. It's also a division problem. You take the denominator, you divide it into numerator. If I have 1/2, I divide 2 into 1. What do I get? 0.5. Is there any numbers after that? No, that's a terminal decimal. When you see that, I want you to think of the terminator. Okay. Have you ever heard of the Motley Crue decimal? No. If I take 2/3 and divide 3 into 2, I should call it Iron Maiden. You get 0.6666. That's a repeating decimal. Terminal and repeating decimals are rational numbers. Have you ever seen 3.1426? And I go, yeah. I go, what's that? That's pi. That's irrational. That's the Buzz Lightyear, because the numbers keep on going, different numbers to infinity and beyond. So, Efren, if I said to you, what is 3/4 times pi? You would say the product is irrational. And you say, but I say, why? They say, because pi is irrational, and a non-zero rational number times an irrational number is irrational. And I say to the kids, wow, 5 minutes ago, you guys couldn't do that. And they're like, they do a Keanu. Whoa.
I again, this has been a masterclass. Find out what part of the standard the student is missing. What a great point of discussion to start the conversation on how to improve
What's the
learning acquisition.
Absolutely. Right. What's the
bullseye?
And teachers will understand it, because when, especially that standard that says about theme. Well, I taught them theme. Well, did you teach them how to determine a theme? No, I taught them what the theme of the story of the book was why. Okay, but did you teach them how to determine a theme? Well, yeah, I taught them how to determine it. Did you teach them how to determine a theme of one story, a story, from details in the text, including how characters respond to challenges? And they'd say, no. Well, that's why I didn't achieve the standard. Simple trick. Unpack and unwrap your standards. Circle your verbs, underline your nouns. Ainsworth method. Then I want you to take a highlighter, and I want you to highlight everything that comes after that first verb until the period. That's depth of knowledge.
We had to read your book. Erik, where can people find you?
Well, I'm on Twitter, as you see there. It's at Maverick, Maverik EDU12. No seeing Maverick again. My webpage is Maverick, Maverik education.com. If you go on there, you'll see there's a little chat bot. You can text me if you have questions. You also can schedule some time if you want to do a one-on-one consultation with DOK. Because I know sometimes what I found is some school districts either A, they can't afford to bring me in, or B, that's not our initiative right now. But if a teacher wants it, I'll do a one-on-one with them or do a group with them. That's kind of how I do a pay-for-play coaching service. But if I am contracted with your district, what I do is this: I come out, I do the PD, and then from there, you get virtual coaching with me to follow up. So that's how I kind of RTI my PD, where you have tier 1, which is everybody, tier 2, which is small group, and tier 3, which is one-on-one. So go on there, check it out, schedule a time. So www.maverickeducation.com and Twitter at Maverick EDU12. And Efren, thank you so much for letting me take the time on a Saturday morning to just kind of ramble about stuff. And thank you for letting me talk.
Oh, I feel I'm a better educator just by listening to you. Thank you so much, Erik. Have a fantastic Saturday.
You too, buddy. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Wisdom and Productivity, the podcast of Dr. Eparim Martinez.
Chulo.
And as of that production, chill out.